So I want to welcome everybody who is here to SALT Talks tonight. We're trying something new. This is our first hybrid. So we are attending, some are attending live in person at the Greene County Board of Developmental Disabilities there outside of Xenia. And then we're also holding it via Zoom. So this is our first attempt at this. I am recording tonight. Hopefully all will go well with everything. I hear there's storms in the area, but hopefully we make it through without too many hiccups. So anyway, so tonight we're going to be talking about the SSI and SSDI process, how you navigate those, and then the work incentives. This is all a challenging topic for us as parents, whether it's your first time or you've been in it a while like me, it's still challenging. When you get questions or have to go through some sort of work activity packet or something, but it's always challenging. So we have some speakers here tonight. We have, and I'll let them tell, each of them can introduce themselves too, but we have Cindy Nava, she's from the Greene County Board of DD, and we have Tammy Disney from the Montgomery County Board of DD. They're both benefit analysis representatives, and they can tell you a little bit more about that position too when they introduce themselves. So I'm going to turn it over. I think on virtual, everybody should be able to see the screen, and it looks like in the room you can see the screen. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. I believe she was going first, but you guys can introduce yourself and then go ahead and start.
Thank you. So I am Cindy Nava, and I do work here at Greene County Board of DD. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm also a parent of an individual who gets board services, who is, I do have guardianship, we do have Social Security, so I kind of have my hat in all of those different roles. So it's a very interesting perspective from a parent that I can understand for you. We are going to be discussing about navigating Social Security as well as work incentives. I'm not sure where everybody is in the process. A lot of these slides are based on popular questions from families. So we're really going to break it down on the differences of SSI, what an authorized rep is, and so forth. We're getting the slides to move right now. So thank you for your patience. Awesome. Thank you.
That's the last one, right? Is that good?
Back to. And one more. Thanks, Kathy.
Okay.
So there's my contact information for you, as well as Tammy's. Please feel free to contact us at any time if you have any questions that might arise from today's presentation. If you're dealing with a personal situation with Social Security that you would like us to help support you on, please feel free to reach out. We are both excited to help you in whatever situation that you have. And so we're going to go back to the basics of just understanding what exactly Social Security is. I get a lot of calls saying I'm going to apply, but I'm not sure what I'm applying for. Social Security is a program that is solely administered through the federal government. It does provide monthly payments for individuals for their daily living expenses, such as food, shelter, and utilities, if you are eligible for Social Security. And Social Security uses a number of variables to determine eligibility. It's important to know that even though Tammy and I can both assist you in the application process, we are not part of the determination of eligibility process. That is solely the discretion of Social Security. Social Security does vary from person to person. It is whatever you are eligible for as part of what benefit you're eligible for and how much you are eligible for. It is not a one size fits all. Anybody can apply for Social Security. A parent can apply for their child that is a minor. That happens often. Or an individual can apply through their 18th month. It is not just for a few people of a certain age. The following is a list of part of the criteria where Social Security is available for an individual. And we're going to discuss the top 3 today, which is if the individual is at least 65 or blind or disabled. And it's important to know that those aren't ands, but they're ors. So you can be one or the other, or you can have a combination of those. We're also going to discuss the importance of income and resources as part of the eligibility process. You can apply 4 different ways if you determine that is appropriate to apply for Social Security. You can call your local office and make an appointment. If you do so, you can ask them if they will do the application over the phone. Depending on that location, they may do that or they may not, but they will set a date and time that a caseworker will meet with you and discuss and apply your application. You can apply in person at your local office as well. Please note, when you go down to apply, you might not have a caseworker available immediately to process your application at that time. So you might receive a date and time to come back and apply in person. You can apply online. I provided the website that you can use when you go online to apply. You will be answering 3 questions. Who are you applying for? What are you applying for? And there's going to be a box that you need to check yes. And that is, are you wanting to apply for Social Security? Once you click that yes box, that initiates your application with Social Security. And of course, Tammy and I, we are part of an exciting initiative with Social Security that we can help you in the application process. So if you would like, you can contact either one of us, and we are more than glad to start that application process with you and hopefully to explain it the whole way to make sense for you. There is something on the website called an adult disability checklist. I encourage you to seek that out. If you want us to send it to you, we can do so. It's a really good resource that will show you a lot of information that is going to be included on your application, and that'll help you get your documentation, your contact information in order to make the application process go pretty smooth. There are 4 different types of Social Security. We are going to concentrate on the Supplemental Security Income, also known as SSI, or the Social Security Disability Insurance, known as SSDI. Social Security has a word called concurrent, which means that you can actually be eligible for more than one type of Social Security. For example, you can be receiving SSDI and some SSI at the same time. So that would be a concurrent benefit, or you will be eligible for only one type of benefit. So SSI and SSDI are the 2 programs that are disability related from Social Security that they do offer. Again, the intent of the program is to provide financial support for individuals who have been identified with a disability. They do provide assistance to individuals who meet the criteria set forth by Social Security. They have their own definition of disability. So it is according to their criteria and their requirements and their definitions of disability, not ours. Because of that, requirements might look different for Social Security than what you may be used to. If your young adult is in school and has a 504 or an IEP, or if you're currently receiving services from the county board, that does not make you automatically eligible for Social Security. Our eligibility criteria is far different than that of Social Security. However, those documents and our support and services can be great supplemental information that will go with your application if you so choose. So the biggest question we have is, what is the difference between SSDI and SSI? There are some similarities as part of, you both have to be medically eligible to receive one or the other, and both require income reporting. That really is the only similarities between both of the programs. So SSDI is a benefit program, also known as insured program. That is why it's included in the name. SSDI is solely based off of work history and work credits, which means if you are new to the workforce, as you work, you earn credits. And once you reach a certain credits, you might be able to receive Social Security benefits off of your own work history. They will pay benefits to you and or family members. Again, SSDI is based off of work history and work credits. So if you're an individual with a disability that has been identified prior to the age of 22, and if you have a parent that either is deceased, retired, or is receiving Social Security because they too are disabled, you might be eligible to receive benefits off of their work history. You do have to have evidence that the individual is incapable of performing what's called substantial gainful activity. We also call this SGA. All this means is because SSDI is based on work history. If you are earning an income that is above the income cap Social Security has set forth for eligibility, if you earn a higher income, then you will not be eligible for SSDI. That might be indefinitely, or it could be month to month. You might have a month where you earn more or you earn less the next month. That's why it's imperative that you do report your monthly income to Social Security. Currently for 2023, that SGA amount for individuals who are blind is $2,460, and individuals who are not blind, it's $1,470. That is gross income for the month. And again, you are required to report your monthly income by the 10th of every month. Social Security is 30 days in the rear. So what income you report on February the 10th will be income earned from January. You can report that income in many ways. You can call it in. You can use a phone app, which is becoming very popular and very easy for individuals. You can do it online, or you can go in person. If you go in person to report your income, I do suggest asking for a receipt as proof that you did report income for that month. SSI is different. SSI is a cash assistance program. It is needs-based. Another needs-based program you're familiar with is Medicaid. So if you're eligible for SSI, you will be eligible for Medicaid. Both of them are a needs-based program. Those that are eligible for SSI have little to no work history, and they do not meet the requirements for SSDI. That means they have either no history or their work history is limited. They have not earned enough credits to receive SSDI based on their own work record. When you're applying for Social Security is going to run you through all of the benefits available to see what you're eligible for. Many families will receive a denial for SSDI, although it may not feel clear enough on the letter that they know it's a denial for SSDI. That just means that the individual does not qualify for that program. It is not closing your application at all. It is now processing your application based on the eligibility criteria for SSI. If you ever receive a letter and it's confusing, or you just need to have more information, you can either call Social Security directly, or please call myself or Tammy. We're more than glad to review the letter with you and help encourage you that it just means SSDI is not applicable for that person. Again, for SSI and SSDI, you must be medically eligible for both of them and maintain that medical eligibility. Because SSI is different and it's a needs-based, you must not only maintain an income. If you are working with SSI, you're under the same income standard of the 1470. If you do not have blindness, or 2460, if you do have blindness, you are to adhere to that income, but as well as resources. It's a cash assistance program, and this is where SSI and SSDI differ vastly. For SSDI, it's not resource-based. You can have any amount of resources because it's insured benefit. For SSI, it is a cash assistance. So you are required to report and maintain your resources. If you're an individual, it's 2,000 or less. That is cumulative. That is all banking accounts, certain insurance, burial plots, anything that Social Security considers a resource, it must be under 2,000. And if you're a couple, it is under 3,000. A big question with that comes up is because on the application process, they do have a whole section where you are required to report trust funds, if you have a stable account, how much money you have on person, how much money is in the bank accounts, and you are required to report if there are gift cards. And gift cards are non-applicable for SSDI, but they are applicable for SSI because they are monetary value and they do contribute to your resources. Again, you do not have to report that for SSDI. SSI looks at all earned and unearned income. Again, that is a combination of income that you're earning and things such as a monetary gift or a gift card. In kind, also known as in kindness, this does not apply for SSDI, but it does apply for SSI. So if a person is deemed eligible for Social Security, the next question is, how much are they eligible for? Your response and the expectation of that person determines what they're eligible for. So the purpose of Social Security is to supplement income you cannot earn as a direct result to your disability to be applied towards your daily living expenses. So if your young adult is approved for SSI and they're living in their home, do you expect them to contribute to the fair share of expenses within that home? If the answer to that is yes, Social Security will require you to report what those expenses are. They're looking at utilities, water, trash, mortgage, rent. Is your property taxes included in your mortgage? They're looking for all of those things. They do not want credit card debt, student loan debt. They're not asking for that. They will ask you how many people are living in your home and how old are they. That determines their eligibility, financial, what they're going to get, because they will take the amount of people that live in the home and they'll divide that. So if your expenses are $1,600 and there's 4 adults in the house, they will take $1,600 divided by 4. That is the fair share that the individual will be contributing to the expenses. If you do not expect them to pay fair share of expenses, it's called in-kindness. There is a monetary value for in-kindness. So if you provide shelter and food for the individual, their Social Security will reflect that in their benefit. If they're not expected to pay for those things, then their monthly supplement will be reduced because they are not contributing to that. In-kindness is not all or nothing. You don't have to provide everything. In-kindness or nothing. Like I said, you can provide one area. You can provide utilities, in-kindness, or mortgage, in-kindness, or food. But you have to report to Social Security what you will be providing in-kindness. And again, that will be adjusted. If you're going to provide everything in-kindness, you need to report that. The individual will receive a monthly supplement. It will not be a full benefit, but that will resemble what their expectation is. And so it will be reduced, and it can be reduced up to $300. And that is the discretion of Social Security. Right now, these are our monthly benefits. If you are receiving Social Security now, you would have received a letter in December stating if you are eligible for Social Security and how much you're eligible for moving into 2023. There is a cost of living adjustment every year with Social Security. So this is a full benefit would be $914 for this year and $1371 for an individual. And then, of course, the SGA that we've reviewed for an individual who is blind and individual who is not blind. This is different from what it was last year. This is the standard they are holding to for this year. Representative Payee is a big topic of discussion. That is something that will come up as the application process. You don't have to be an authorized representative. You can ask an organization or somebody to do that on your behalf if applicable. So a rep payee can be a person 18 or older or an organization. Social Security will appoint a payee to receive the benefits on behalf of that individual who is unable to manage their benefits or able to direct direct management of their benefits towards certain bills. It is not your income. As an authorized rep, it is always the individual's income. Your role is just to assist them in the management of that income. If you are currently a guardian, a representative with some other agency, maybe an authorized rep with Medicaid department, or if you have a power of attorney, that does not, according to Social Security, give you the legal authority over their monthly benefit. You actually have to apply to be a rep payee, regardless of your status of guardianship or POA. Please make sure Social Security has copies of your POA and guardianship for record, because that does give you the authority to call and answer questions on behalf of the person, but not to manage the individual's information. If the individual is their own guardian, not only are they responsible to sign the consent forms in the application, but they also can approve a rep payee because they are their own guardian. If you are their guardian, you can sign the application, can sign the consent forms that the application requires, and you also can you can apply to be the rep payee, or you can appoint somebody with your approval to be the rep payee. There's many duties as a rep payee, regardless if you are a parent or not. You're held to the standards as everybody who takes on that role appointed by Social Security. Some of those roles is you are to use the benefits to pay for that individual's living expenses and current needs. That is the first and foremost that you are to do. You to meet those immediate needs. If there's money left over, you can save that on behalf of that person for future planning as well. It's also your role to make sure that eligibility is maintained for that individual. That's why it's very imperative, you know, if they're getting SSDI or SSI, because those eligibility criteria are different, and you're to assist them to maintain that eligibility. You are responsible for opening what's called a rep payee bank account. When you're appointed rep payee, you will receive a approval letter in the mail. You take that letter to a bank of your choice and you ask them to open up a rep payee bank account. They will need to see that letter. Do not be surprised if they make a copy of that letter for records. Rep payee account is far different than any other checking or savings account. It is what is going to be deposited. The individual Social Security funds will be deposited into that rep account. Please do not delegate your rep payee responsibilities to anybody else. You have signed that contract with Social Security that you are overseeing that money. So please do not delegate that to do for somebody else. You will only be authorized to use that account and the individual. There are no other names that will be associated with that account. So that's very important. There is no commingling of funds with rep payees and individuals. So if you are the rep payee, please do not have a direct deposit for your paycheck in that account or put anything in that account. That account belongs to the individual and their direct deposit. You also are required to provide the routing number and banking information to Social Security so they have a bank information so they can go ahead and deposit that information or deposit their supplement into that bank. It is your responsibility that Social Security has that information. Rep payees are also responsible for reporting of expenses. Every year, Social Security will send out an annual report to report what they will tell you. This is how much they received for the year. How was that spent? And there's a breakdown that you are required to respond to what was saved, what was spent, and what was allocated to what area. There are some exceptions. Parents are an exception for completing that form. We have many parents who receive the form anyways. Even though you know you're an exception, I encourage you to call Social Security and let them know you received the letter. You want to make sure that the letter was sent in error, or they might be asking you to account record-wise of how that money was spent. So please call Social Security if you believe you are exempted from that and let them tell you if it was sent in error or not. You also are responsible for reporting any and all changes of the individual. That can be their income, if it goes up or down, if their hours go up or down, if they move, change of address, change of name, any and all changes are to be reported in a timely manner to Social Security. And marital status. An individual certainly can get married and still receive Social Security. How that looks is up to the discretion of Social Security. Depending on what benefit you're receiving, you may no longer be eligible for that benefit due to a marriage, and you might be eligible for a different kind of benefit. But you can get married and still receive Social Security benefits. Social Security does not require a legal marriage to consider you married. That is very important to know. When they ask you your living arrangements, and if they assume or if it appears that you are living with somebody as a couple committed, then they can consider that a marriage, even though you do not have a legal certification. So that's why reporting is important, and that's fairly new for them.
Cindy?
Yes.
Did you say that a parent is exempt from keeping expense records?
I recommend that all parents do keep reporting records. I always say best practice is to keep a record of expenses that are paid in case Social Security should ask you to account. Parents are exempt from filling out the yearly annual report.
Okay.
Yes, but definitely it is your role as a rep payee to keep record.
Yeah, and the reason they did that was that they were it was kind of bogging the system down to send out those payee reports to parents, because they know that, you know, probably most parents are going to make sure that the individual has food and housing. So it was like, you know, there always could be somebody who says, hey, I think this parent's not doing the right thing. And then they may say, okay, send us your records.
Yeah.
So they can send the records, but they are like, we're wasting our parents' time and our Social Security time by looking at information that these parents, and most of the people that have disabilities has another agency looking into. So if somebody's not getting food, we're going to be calling Social Security, or we're going to be, so they kind of stop doing parents. But the reason that they kind of send them out sometimes is because, your parent name may not be the same as the individual's last name. So they may not know if it's a parent that's the payee. So they may send them out. So that's why she's saying call. You can say, hey, I'm her father, and they can say, okay, you don't have to do it.
Okay.
But do keep your records.
Yes.
And also don't commingle your money with her money, because that just makes it harder for Social Security to determine what resources are yours and what resources are there. So just keep it clean, keep it separate.
Absolutely. And also part of that, if you are not going to be that rep payee and you're a guardian, you as a guardian have a right to oversee how finances are delegated. So if you opt to have an organization to be a rep payee for the individual, talk to your SSA. We have lots of organizations who provide that service, but as a guardian, you do have a right to oversee where the money is being allocated and so forth. You just don't have rights over the actual Social Security and the management of it, but you certainly can oversee how it's being allocated. Appeal process, this is big. For all decisions from Social Security, you do have a right to appeal any and all of their decisions. When you get a letter, they are telling you what a decision is, and they will also tell you that you have a right to appeal the decision. Sometimes you can just sign the form, send it back. That starts your appeal. You can also call in, go in person, or appeal online, or you can call Tammy and myself, and we can assist you with some of the documentation that is required for an appeal to a decision. You are not required to provide supporting documentation with an appeal. It can be very helpful if there's maybe a decision that an overpayment has happened and it's due to somebody exceeding SGA. You can send copies of payroll to show that they actually have not exceeded SGA. That would be very appropriate supporting documentation to send to Social Security as part of that appeal. The appeals go in this order. The first appeal is to request a reconsideration of the decision. Once you receive that decision back, if it's standing, then the next part is you go for a hearing with the judge. If the decision is still standing on the side of Social Security, you can request for a review of that hearing that you were a part of with the judge. And then finally, the last appeal is to you can appeal, and it will go in front of the district court. You obviously can have legal counsel with you. All of that is explained not only online, I provided the email or the web address for you, but it's also explained in Social Security's letter that you do have a right to have anybody assist you with appeal or legal representation.
All right, so I am actually a work incentives counselor, and was actually sent to Denver, Colorado, and got in service by or trained by Social Security to do benefits analysis and work incentives counseling. So I have to know all the rules, and the rules change, the amounts change. So it's kind of a daunting task, but our county and Greene County has decided that they need somebody to kind of help parents work through these issues, because there's letters that come that you may not understand. Give us a call if you get a letter of that. We can look at it and give you what the letter's actually saying. Because sometimes they actually use lingo that you may not know what it means to. So, but work incentives. So basically, when your sons or daughters turn 18, they can apply for Social Security the month after they turn 18. That's when they look at what the individual has as far as resources and income. Before that, if you do it 17 or 16, they're going to take the household income and resources. So a lot of times they won't be eligible until they're actually 18. And you have to wait for the month after, because if you apply at 18 for part of the month, they were 17, so they're not going to give it. So make sure that you apply the month after they turn 18, or you can do it any month after they turn 18. So SSI, when you work, that's the supplemental. So that's just basically general tax dollars that you're getting to help pay for bills. So when you start working, or when the individual starts working, they have income, they got work money coming in. And so Social Security says, okay, we want people with disabilities to go to work, but make sure that you report to us, because as you have more work income, you probably are going to need a little less SSR. Now, it's not dollar for dollar. Okay, they allow you to have two general exclusion. One is a $20, just a general exclusion, and the other one's a $65 earned income exclusion. So the first $85 that somebody earns, will not reduce the SSI check. And then for the amount over that, they reduce the SSI check. For every $2 that they earn, they only reduce the SSI by $1. So therefore, it's a benefit for them to work because they will have more income working than not working. A lot of times people were saying, I can't make any money because it's going to reduce my SSI. But in the total income will be more. And that's what Social Security gave those work incentives of only counting some of the income that you have earned. So when employed, the monthly check amount will vary based on income. They also take into consideration if you have unearned income. So if they get a VA benefit off of a parent or child support, they also take that kind of stuff as part of income. So your amount that you get will be based on what your total income is, what your work income is, and then the reduction. So that's the SSI side. This Title II benefits, which is your SSDI or your child dependent benefits. That's a full benefit. You either get it every month or you don't. Okay, and you're eligible for it. Once you get it approved, you're eligible for it. And then that's when they're looking at substantial gainful activity. Now, for people who are on SSDI and CDB, if they are wanting to work, they're worried, they could be worried about losing their check. So Social Security gives you some work incentives because they want individuals who have disabilities to go back to work. It's a win-win for everybody. The person who is working, they're paying into taxes. We all know that people are probably healthier and happier working than not working. They can have friends. I mean, there's lots of benefits to it. So the substantial gainful activity for 2023 is $1,470. That's the income. If somebody starts earning over that, Social Security would say, okay, you still have your disability, but you're able to make enough money to pay your bills. Okay. Which one do I push? Okay. All right, so Title 16 was the SSI. All right, if they go to work and they have to pay for something in order to go to work, they have what's called impairment related work expenses, and that's something that somebody I go to work, I have to there's a medication that I don't get covered by anybody else, I have to pay for, but I need it in order to calm me down in order to go to work. You can keep records of that and talk with your caseworker at Social Security and get that listed as an impairment related work expense, and then every month send in the bill or the receipts, and they would then say, okay, that $50 that you had to pay, you didn't actually get to put that in your pocket because you had to pay for something in order to go to work. So those are impairment related work expenses. So these are items that the individual must pay out of their pocket. So if they have a waiver and waiver pays for transportation, then you can't claim it because it's not something that you're paid for. Examples can be interpreter service, personal care service, or transportation costs. And those are something that if you have to pay for them out of your own pocket. So that's something that you would then call the Social Security caseworker, which everybody has a caseworker when they're on Social Security, and let them know, hey, I had somebody who claimed their cell phone, and basically they used it as a schedule, and it like gave them prompts to like move to the next task. And so the Social Security person approved and said, okay, how often do you use that cell phone for work and how often are you using it for home? And came up with a percentage and then let them write off some of their cell phone bill every month. Very, very nice. And truly it is the SSI or the caseworkers. Sometimes you'll get somebody that'll say, nope, that's not going to be approved. And somebody will say, yeah, we'll approve it. So it really is kind of it. But if you go in there and say, he really needs his cell phone because that's what's helping him in his job. It's helping him keep his job, maintain his job, and he needs it. And then they say, okay, give us the bill every month, and we will let him write it off. All right. Student earned income exclusion, huge for people who are in school still. A lot of times when our individuals turn 18, they're still in school. Okay, and we are looking at trying to then find out what vocation they're going to look into. What do they want to work? So if they're getting SSI, a lot of times parents are saying, well, if you work, they're going to take away money or reduce the SSI, and we need the SSI to pay the bills. So Social Security got together and they said, okay, we want people that are young to work, because if they're working when they're young, when they graduate, they already have experience working, they've got supports wrapped around them, and they're going to be probably successful. So they did this program called Student Earned Income Exclusion. And then, so when up to the age of 22, if you're still in school, you can claim this, all right? And so for $2,220 a month, they can earn, and it won't affect their SSI. It doesn't go up and down like minus the 65, minus the 20, and divided by 2. That's because they want students to work, okay? Now, the maximum annual is only $8,950. And the reason that they do that is because they realize that a lot of times the kids will work summer jobs and may make a lot of money in the summer, and during school, they probably aren't going to make a whole lot. So if they make over $8,950, then the student income exclusion for the year has been used up, and then SSI will go up and down. But this is very, very important. The definitions of a student is an individual has to be in grades 7 through 12 and have at least 12 hours of schooling per week. They can also be in college or university and have at least 8 hours per week of college. They could be in a training course to prepare for employment and have at least 12 hours a week of training. So those are the definitions of student. Now, you would think that there would be a form that you would turn in to Social Security that says my son or my daughter is a student. There is no form. So what they do, what you would need to do is if your children are wanting to work and you're the payee, you can call Social Security and say, you know, my daughter is got a job, because as a payee, you will be required to let them know. And then you let them know that, hey, they're still in school. And the way that you prove that would be either giving them maybe the student ID card for the school, their schedule, a letter from the school that says they're still in school. So there would be, you do have to prove that they are still in school at some point. And then at age 22, they're no longer eligible because, you know, they age out of it. But this is a very, very good way of individuals go out there, try. They may be able to work a 30, 40-hour job. Who knows? While they're in school, they can. It's not going to affect their SSI because it's excluded up to the $8,950 for the month, for the for the year. All right. You also can do the impairment-related work expenses if you're getting SSDI. So SSI is general tax dollars. SSDI is off of work-related. So basically, they could be earning work credits when they're starting to work. They get individuals that are under 22 when they get their disability determined by Social Security only have to work 6 work credits. So in about a year and a half, a lot of our individuals could possibly start being eligible for SSDI. So if the individual could also then be getting off of getting the Social Security off of a parent work record too, if a parent's retired, if a parent is disabled, or if a parent is deceased. Those also can be impairment-related work expenses and be looked at. And the only reason that you would need to use those for SSDI is if you're over SGA, you need to get yourself under SGA, that $1,470. But they are available to the SSDI people also. Okay. Subsidies and special conditions. The other thing for SSDI is if you're working and you're making enough money or close to SGA, and you are saying, hey, my individual needs extra help while working, extra supervision, they have to sit down every hour for 10 minutes. Those are things that Social Security would say, okay, although you could be making over SGA, you're really not earning all of your money because you have these extra support. Your employer is giving you extras, or somebody is giving you some assistance. So what Social Security does is once you tell them what the assistance is, they then look at that and put a monetary value on it and say, how much productivity are you doing? If you're only working at 80% productivity, then they only count 80% of what the individual earned. So, for example, if there is a job that you're doing that has 10 tasks, and because of your disability, you can only do 8 of them. There's 2 that you can't do. You can't run the cash register. You can't drop the prize because you don't know how. You can't. It's not safe. Then when you if you're over SGA for Title II, you can then say, yes, I am getting this much money, but I'm really only earning 80% of it because somebody else is dropping the prize and somebody else has to run the cash register. And so those are ways that you can bring an individual, their earned income under the SGA level. All right, so let's back up. There's a continuum. So you get somebody on SSI, they start having work and they get enough credits, they get put on SSDI. The SSDI then is looking at the trial work period. They have work incentives that are only for the SSDI. So if you're off of SSI, or even if you're on SSI, and you're getting a little bit of SSDI, that's when they're looking at substantial gainful activity. SSI doesn't really look at substantial gainful activity only when you first apply. So you can actually go over SGA and still get SSI. It could zero out your SSI per month, but it doesn't make you lose it totally until you're off of a payment for 12 months. But so if you go under SGA or go under the amount to zero out SSI, you get a check. If you go over, you may not get a check for that month. But for SSDI, it's all or nothing. All right, so the continuum is you get on SSDI. From the month that you get SSDI, that's when your trial work periods could begin. So if they're working and they make $1,050 in a month, which is less than SGA, but that's the trial work period amount. If they make $1,050, then they have made they've used one trial work period. So Security gives an individual, so they can make $2,000 and still not lose their SSDI while they're in the trial work period. Because the trial work period says, go out, try it, see what you can do. After the 9 months is used up. Now, the 9 months doesn't have to be consecutive, so they could like make 1,100 one month and 900 the next. They've only used 1 month. They do a 5-year rolling period. So in that 5 years, if they do the 1,050 and it goes up typically every year, if they go over the trial work period amount and they use up 9 of their trial work period, then when the trial work period ends, the very next month is the extended period of eligibility. And this is huge. So for the 3 years after the trial work period, they are eligible for a check if they don't go over SGA, but if they do go over SGA, they're not due a check. So if they go over SGA and they go the next month, they go under again, guess what? They are due a check. So they have 3 years where they're looking at how much are they earning. Over SGA, no check. Under SGA, yes, a check. So if they are not getting a check and then all of a sudden something changes, they can't do the job anymore, their health changes, the job changes, they can then say, okay, I was over for 9 months, now I can't do it, I need my check back. So Social Security will turn their check back on, really no questions asked, because they're in their extended period of eligibility. So basically, Social Security is giving you 9 months and then another 3 years of working where you can still keep your eligibility and your check if you're not going over the SGA. So it's huge. However, from the 9 month trial work period, once it begins, it goes continuous. So it's for the next 3 years. At the end of the 3rd year, from when your trial work period ends, your extended period of eligibility is gone and you can't use it anymore. You start working over SGA, your Social Security check stops. And then they also then give you a, and I don't think I put it on there, a period of extended, expedited reinstatement. And that's for 5 years after your Social Security check stops. They say, if something changes and you need to get the check back, you can apply for expedited reinstatement. And that means that you're saying, I can't do it anymore. I did it for 5 years, now I can't do it. Social Security that allows you to do that. It's kind of a little bit of a process, but it's easier than a total reapplication. Because when you're doing expedited reinstatement, Social Security kind of has to prove that you can work. Whereas when you're trying to get Social Security or first applying, you have to prove that you cannot work. So the burden of proof kind of becomes on Social Security during the expedited reinstatement. I have personally helped about 5 people do expedited reinstatement and all 5 of them got their check back. So it is much easier. Working and going over SGA and then reapplying, that's going to be something that you're going to have to prove. Why were you able to go over SGA for months and now you can't? It becomes your burden of proof. So if the person needs to reapply within the 5 years after it stops, then it is a better than having to total reapply. But after the 5 years of the expedited reinstatement are up, then if they go over SGA, they have to do a full application again. But you can see that they're giving you a lot of work incentives, saying work it, try it. You know, you may lose a check here or there, but you can get it back for many years. And they're hoping, what they're hoping is going to happen is that the individual is going to get in a job and they're going to do well at it. They're going to get good at it. They're going to basically not be so dependent on Social Security or SSI. Once they get on SSDI, they can, you know, you still want to look at what the benefit would be for them having a check and not having a check, but there are some work incentives. All right, insurance, another benefit that most individuals are looking at. So in the state of Ohio, you get SSI, you get Medicaid. That is a law. You have to do that. Now, it's not automatic. You have to still apply to Jobs and Family Services, but they cannot turn you down. Once they find out an individual has SSI, they get Medicaid. And JFS then will not review resources because that's what Social Security does. SSI will give you a redetermination they're supposed to do it every year, but sometimes it ends up being about every year and a half, 2 years, where they look at bank statements and income and make sure that the person is still qualified. So for SSI, you get Medicaid. The other reason that you can get Medicaid is if you're what the ABD is age, blind, and disabled, and that's a category for people who are getting low income or maybe over 65 or blind. They can possibly apply and get approval for Medicaid too. Waiver Medicaid is another way that individuals can apply, can get Medicaid. So they may be over income or assets for Medicaid. The assets they probably need to worry about, but they may be over income for Medicaid because they're getting a lot of a very nice security check. However, once they need a long-term care, which is what waiver Medicaid is, then they look at what's called special income level, and the amount of income that they can have gets raised up a lot. And then that's when they would say, okay, you're having all this income from your parent work record. This is what your personal needs allowance is. But anything above that could possibly be a patient liability. And that would be their share of costs. So these are things that are in the future, and that we're going over a lot of information. So, you know, it's kind of like just touching the basics. The resource limit for Medicaid is $2,000. There is a nice program called the Medicaid Buy-in for Workers with Disabilities. Okay, and that is what happens is that Social Security wants people to work. So if they would work themselves off of SSI and they lose their Medicaid, it's really not a benefit for the person to work, because a lot of times they need their Medicaid to pay for their medications, to pay for their waiver services, to pay for their doctor's visits and what have you. So they created this Medicaid buy-in. So if you're working, you can let Jobs and Family Services know you want to be on it. So you must be working. And you have a resource limit of $13,233. So that $2,000 asset limit for regular Medicaid or straight Medicaid now becomes $13,233. Now they may have a premium. Okay, so that patient liability, whatever that amount would be, over what the personal needs allowance is, they would have to pay all of it to whoever their service provider is for waiver. If they go on the Medicaid with workers with disabilities, they may have a 10% penalty or premium. So if they have $500 that they have to pay as a patient liability, they may have like a $75 premium. The caveat to that is Medicaid hasn't collected premiums for Medicaid buy-in for several years. Now they always tell us they're going to start collecting them again. So if they are on the Medicaid buy-in and they don't get a bill in the mail, they do not have to pay their premium, even though JFS has told them to have a premium. If they do get a bill, they have to pay it, just like everybody else has to pay their premium to keep their Medicaid. All right, so SSI, you get Medicaid. So what happens if I start working and I'm working enough and I get no SSI? So if you do that, Social Security will put you on what's called the 1619B Medicaid. And it just means that you're still eligible for SSI, you're just not getting a payment. And that is also a benefit for people to work and to not have to worry about keeping enough to get an SSI payment. So an individual can make up to $40,078 and still be on Medicaid. Huge for people. So you have people that really can. They want people to go back to work, and that's why they're giving these incentives and saying, hey, it's going to benefit everybody for you to go to work. So we're going to let you keep your Medicaid, which was what a lot of people were saying why they were not working was because they needed their Medicaid. This is just the qualifications of the Medicaid buy-in. I'm not going to go over that because I think we're running short on time. It's going to be it's in your handout. If you have any questions, you can certainly call me. You also get an extended period of eligibility of Medicare. If you get off of SSDI, they give you about a 7-year continuance of your Medicare. And by that time, they're hoping that you will have other medical stuff to do. So benefits analysis, this is like my last slide. Okay, benefits analysis, OOD, which is hopefully all of the children in high school are attached with a counselor who's going to help try to get them a job. And so there's funding where OOD can help pay for people to help them find jobs. So they also then give them a benefits analysis referral to me or to somebody who's certified. And then we look at their benefits and give them all of this information and tell them how working is going to affect their benefits. So we look at what their benefits are, how much they're planning on earning. I tell people I work for DDS, you can call me at any time if you get a raise, if something happens and you get a letter that says, something, call me, I can help explain it. So that's basically, this is the bulk of my job. I do help people like the VPAP program with Social Security has been wonderful. It's the Vulnerable Population Application Process or program. And it's basically during COVID, SSI applications went down 55%. So Social Security was like, okay, we've got a huge amount of people that we know could be eligible. They just aren't able to apply. Either it's too hard, they can't do it, our offices are closed, they can't get appointments. So then they said, why don't we pair up with some of the agencies that already deal with individuals that have disabilities and allow them to help with the process. So we don't guarantee approval, but we certainly can get the ball rolling. And they have dedicated staff that just do the VPAP, and the process is much, much easier. So if you're getting ready to apply for SSI, please let us know because we can probably help put it through the VPAP so it doesn't have to go to the general Social Security office and then sit there till somebody gets assigned. I mean, literally when I send it to my contact, she calls them within a couple days. So it's much, much, much better. And here is just a few resources of places where we got this information, or if you want more information, you can go to that. And then the last one is the Legal Aid Society. They do have lawyers that if you have an overpayment or you're getting a denial, and you can call them and consult and say, hey, do I have a case? Can you help me? They help with overpayments and that kind of stuff all the time. So that is basically my work incentives information. So I guess if anybody has questions, that would be the time.
We have a couple questions on virtual. So I'll start with the first one and work our way down through. We go till 7:30, just to let you know, in case you have to cover anything else. So let's see, let me get this. So the first question was, I think it was back when Cindy was talking, was mentioning when applying for Social Security, and they look at all your resources and everything. And I think you mentioned something about stable account, just making sure that the stable account, they just want to know about it. They're not going to count it against any kind of benefits or eligibility, correct?
That is correct. So for those who may not be aware, stable is an account that funding for the individual can go into. It is federally protected. Some trust funds are also federally protected. When you are applying for Social Security, they require for you to report all accounts that the individual has. So you are required to not only provide them information about a stable account, but how much is in a stable account, but it will not go and count for the resources until the stable account reaches $100,000. So you can have quite a bit of money in there before they are going to officially count it as a resource. You just need to make them aware that it does exist.
And the stable account is a very, very nice program, because what was happening was that, you have children, and basically individuals would have to like disinherit their children that had disabilities because could affect their benefits. So there was a group of parents that were lawyers that got together and said, okay, so they worked really diligently trying to change the law, and it wasn't working. And so what they did is they said, okay, we're going to mirror it after the 529 plans. So that's the same amount of money you can put in one of your children that's going to college, you can put into an individual that has a disability. So the stable account is a Medicaid payback account, and that's how it gets around being an asset. So at the end of life for the individual, all of the person's final bills can be paid out of that account. And then then Medicaid will come in and say, okay, over their lifetime, we paid this much money for their care, we're going to recover some of it. So that's how they get around it being considered an asset, because it will be paid back. But while they're alive, it's their money and they can spend it however they want. They can spend it for rent, they can spend it for food, they can spend it for recreation, things that makes their lives a better experience. And that's what the ABLE part of it is. So it's huge. For somebody working, staying under $2,000 is kind of hard because you got money coming in. And so what do? Go spend it every month? And what was happening is nobody could ever save for a larger purchase because they couldn't keep any money in their account. So the stable account was a way for people to say, okay, we're going to put money into this account so that when you get an apartment with your Social Security, you can only afford, an apartment with $350 for rent. But if you've got money in your stable account, you can put $300 more to it and get an apartment for $750. So it is a way for a person to kind of have a little bit of assets. Now, the key to that is that they can't cash it out. So they can't just go, there's no bank, it's all online, but they can't like say, give me all my money. If they do that, they would no longer be eligible for Medicaid. But that's what they can say is, hey, this is my Spectrum bill or my cable bill, pay it. And then they go online and the money goes from the account to whoever they owe. There's a debit card that can be loaded or preloaded where you put $200 on there and then they go to the grocery store and they pay for their groceries. Now they can't go to the ATM and cash it out because that's considered an asset, but they can spend that $200 at the grocery store. If they need, and then once that $200, and the reason they do the stable card, a card like that, which is kind of a nice feature, and you have to preload it, is that if an individual has a debit card that goes to, say, an $18,000 bank account, stable account, and somebody steals it, hacks into it, person loses it, or somebody convinces them, hey, you want me to have this car, right? Sometimes bad things could happen. So if you only have $200 on the account, that's all somebody could basically get from you. So if it's attached to that $18,000, they could get $18,000. So they kind of did that on purpose as a safeguard. But it's a huge way to kind of save money. And if somebody is going to get an inheritance or you are only allowed to put in, I think it's $17,000 per year into it, but it is a way for parents to kind of move money in. If somebody gets a large inheritance, then you would probably need to do a special needs trust. And that's going to be, something a little bit bigger. It has a lot more of a cost to set up, but somebody then manages it. This one, you open it with about, I think it was $50, but I think they changed it now to $25. You open it and then they do charge you a monthly fee for it, but you do get quarterly statements and they will do online and what have you. So if they're not going to be putting money into it on a regular basis, they may not want to do it. And somebody, opened it for $50 and she was like getting her bank statement saying they keep taking $2.50. I'm not using it. And I'm like, well, that's your service charge. And so basically she's, well, I don't want this. So she said, well, it's like, well, maybe you need to close it and let them know. She only had $50 in it, so it didn't really change her asset limits. But it is a nice program, and I would like to encourage all of you guys to set one up with the individuals.
If there was another comment out here or question about if they've already receiving their benefits like SSI, and they start a stable account after they've gone through that process, will Social Security, was anything triggered to have them let them know that they have it, or should they just offer the information, you know, that, hey, we just opened a stable account?
So they probably should let Social Security know, because one of the rules of Payee is that you're supposed to let Social Security know of changes, income changes, personal changes. So I would, if I did it, I would let them know. Now, if when they look at the asset limits, yearly or every year and a half, they're gonna catch it then. But I would just kind of give Social Security the heads up and say, hey, this is our stable account, and they may say, okay, we want to have show proof of it. They need to know the number, the account number, because then they can actually make sure that that it was done properly and that it is a stable account. So I would report it to them.
The stable account is now included on the annual report. I think it's on the back page, because you are supposed to, like Tammy has said, report everything. So they are including the stable account information on the back of the annual report. So if you are a guardian and you do have an authorized rep, it's really important that that communication line is open and you are sharing with them. If you did open a stable account, the rep payee should know that, because they are required to report this to Social Security. And so, yes, you have to report how much is in it for Social Security, but they will not count it.
I have several questions that are coming up. Is there anybody raising their hand in the room? Because we have several of them. I'm going to keep going through.
I think we're good here.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. There was a request to show the previous slide. If you can just back it up one slide for the resources links that you had. And then the next question or comment, or they were asking, is Medicaid under a waiver different than Medicaid for SSI recipient? If so, which is better? I think we just want to clarify that a little bit more.
So Medicaid is, for SSI Medicaid, it is full Medicaid. So you get doctors, prescriptions, it is full Medicaid. Waiver Medicaid is also full Medicaid, but it is different because there are some people that will not qualify if they don't get SSI, they get something else. They may not qualify because they have too much income, but once they get long-term care needs and they're on a waiver, then they look at, okay, we allow you to have more income because you have needs, you have medical needs or waiver needs. And so it is kind of the same. It's full Medicaid. So either one of them is good. The issue with SSI Medicaid is there is usually no cost to that because you have SSI. So you don't have to pay a patient liability or a premium. Whereas with waiver Medicaid, there could be a patient liability or a premium depending on how much your income is. And they do count your work income as part of income too. So they count your SSDI check, they count your earned income. So we do have some people that do have a patient liability assessed or a premium if they're working. So they're both kind of, they're both full Medicaid, but SSI is basically free Medicaid. We do have somebody got their hand up here.
I was wondering, I'm at the age now, I'm trying to decide when to take my Social Security. My son is on full Medicaid, he gets SSI, he gets a little bit of SSD right now because his father went on Social Security, but he only gets, they do a partial. He gets like 100 of SSD and the rest comes from SSI. He is on a full waiver. I'm trying to decide, because I was the higher income, when to take my Social Security, because what I learned is the later I take it, I just was talking to Social Security 2 days ago. The later I take it, then when I die, my son would be getting quite a bit more money because I would be getting more. If I took it when I was 70, he would get like 3/4 of that after I die. I'm trying to decide right now when to take it because I'm worried that he would be kicked off his waiver, which he really needs the waiver for his.
Yeah, so if he has a Medicaid waiver, then that helps protect his Medicaid. So if he were to, because basically if you were to retire, he could draw off of your record right now, which could push him off of SSI. But because he has Medicaid waiver, that Medicaid waiver will help protect his Medicaid.
But is there a limit to when he would be kicked off of waiver?
As long as he's eligible for a Medicaid waiver, all of the
That's what I'm
IOs,
saying. How does-
as long as he's maintained eligibility with that waiver, he's not going to be
That's what I
dismissed.
mean, though.
He
Is
has
there
to
an
meet,
income
he has to
limit?
meet, no, there's no income level for waiver. He has to meet level of care,
Oh,
and then he
okay.
has to have Medicaid. So your level of care is done by your county board. And so they do that every year, and they say, yes, he still meets level of care, and then his Medicaid gets redetermined every year, and then they say, okay, he continues. So
But his
there's no
Medicaid,
income
you
limit
have
for
to be-
waiver.
For Medicaid right now, he has to be under $2,000.
Yes, well, because he's SSI, because he has to be under $2,000 for SSI too.
Right,
Right.
but
Is he
if he was
working?
bumped to SSD, I guess, he'd be under my social security. He'd be
Right.
getting as an adult child
Correct.
under mine. That's what I'm wondering. He would be bumped up in how much he's getting, and that's where I'm kind
So
of.
his
worried
assets would
about.
still need to be $2,000 unless he's on the Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities. Otherwise, it still would be $2,000 asset for the Medicaid, not for the Social Security, not for the SSDI. But he would still be able to keep Medicaid. And then once you start getting SSDI and you're on it for 2 years, then Medicare kicks in.
Right, which he's getting to that point right now, the Medicare, but he also has Medicaid as his backup. My worry is the waiver. If he gets kicked off of Medicare or Medicaid because of
No,
maybe making more than 2,000, if I happen to die, he would make more than 2,000.
That's why it's important to keep him under 2,000.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So it's better for me to take my social security now, because if I died, he'd be getting less than if I waited until I was 70, right?
I mean, that's
I mean,
strictly a
that-
personal opinion. I mean,
Mhm.
it's whatever is right for you guys. I mean, we can't.
Well, I
give-
understand that, but I'm
He's not gonna
going
lose,
more on
he's
him.
not gonna lose his waiver.
No.
Unless he doesn't meet level of care anymore, which,
Well, I don't think that's ever gonna happen.
and most of the time.
He
it
will
doesn't
maintain.
happen.
and you're gonna get a letter every year from the Medicaid office. Make sure if they're on a waiver, it does say they're Medicaid eligible because of LOC. Sometimes you might get a letter and it says that they're eligible because of their social security status and they're not acknowledging the waiver. And so make sure that it is reflective that their eligibility is due to their waiver eligibility. And you'll get it every year and it'll say it's been renewed another year and it'll say LOC. So you should get that every year.
And that would come through,
JFS.
okay.
There's another
Okay.
question along the Medicaid line. If a person can get Medicaid if they are getting SSDI instead of SSI.
So SSDI, after you're on it for 2 years, you get Medicare, but it does not kick you off of Medicaid. What that does is if you have a waiver and you have Medicaid, you need that Medicaid to pay for the waiver. So it ends up becoming your secondary. So primary is SSDI or Medicare will pay the primary, and then Medicaid usually picks up all of the rest, the co-pays, the deductibles, and the premiums, the Part B premium, which the $160.90, $164.90 this year, Medicaid will pay. So it's a good thing to have both Medicare and Medicaid, especially if you have a waiver, because that's what needs to help pay for the waiver.
Do you have a question?
Just a comment that I know if I draw, at some point, if I wait to draw my social security, it goes up like 8% every year. And I don't know when that starts, at what age that starts, and when that stops. But if I draw it and I'm still working and paying into social security, my social security still continues to rise. And therefore, my dependent child that is eligible for social security, when I retire and when I die, their social security keeps rising.
Yes,
Is that not correct?
yes. And an individual who gets Social Security off of their own work record, as they're working, they're paying into Social Security. And so at the end of the year, usually their Social Security is supposed to do a work activity review and look at how much they paid in. And they may give them a bump up of their own SSDI because they've been paying in more. So you have somebody that could be getting, 248 this year, and then they worked and they did well, and they paid into Social Security, and so they do a computation and say now they're eligible for, $500 Social Security. So it can, even for an individual who has disability while they're working, their Social Security can go up.
What is my daughter eligible for at 18 if I have not drawn Social Security? Do they look at what I would draw for Social Security and give her a percentage, or is it based on just her?
You would be eligible for SSI.
Okay,
You can't get off of a work record of a parent until the parent is actually drawing Social Security themselves. So either you're getting it because you're retired, you're getting it because you have a disability yourself, or you passed away. And then she would get survivorship benefits, which are a different, so somebody can't get it off of it until the work record is being used to pay somebody else.
okay.
So that's the big difference of the eligibility criteria. If you're a minor, it's based on the resources and income of your parents, and if you're medical eligible. But once you're through your 18th month, then the third addition would be the employability. Do you have a work history? Do you not have a work history? And can you work? What does that look like? So that's the biggest difference, besides it being only their income and only their resources, but it has to be past their 18th birthday. We say through their 18th month or 18 plus a month. So it's better to be safe than sorry, because like Tammy said, a caseworker might say, we're still going to count the parent's income, and a week might make a big difference. So, but like Tammy said, she can't draw on anything unless you are drawing on it already. And Social Security will make that change. So if you do start taking Social Security and stuff, Social Security can make those adjustments and make those
So we just
changes.
have to reapply once I start online.
You wouldn't reapply because her, it's called DAC, because she will be determined as a disabled adult under the age of 22, because that's established. She doesn't have to reapply, because as long as she still maintains that eligibility with Social Security, that change of now moving over and collecting Social Security off of your work record, it doesn't have to be a whole new application. It's not. It's just her switching over to a different benefit that she is eligible for. So.
And that's only if they're under 22 at the time?
Social Security once, you can try to establish eligibility when they are in their adulthood. It can be very difficult because part of the application process goes back to birth on when that disability was established. So if it is established by the age of 22 for Social Security, it's a lot easier, and they can get on the work record a lot easier than a parent. So we always recommend it. Social Security recommends it. It's on their website to have that 22 is that magic number. Don't start it when they're 11th month before, the next month is their 22 birthday. Please start early in doing that to have that established.
I have another question on the virtual. Okay, so we have, my daughter was approved for SSI around 3 to 4 years of age, but we never received her monthly benefit because my husband and I made too much money. We were told once she turns 18, she'll be able to receive those benefits without counting, turns 18 to receive those benefits without counting our income against her. Since it's been so long ago when she was approved and not use the benefits, do we have to apply again when she turns 18, or will she just start receiving her benefit automatically when she turns 18? She has a disability for life and won't be working.
Yeah, so SSI is kind of a month-to-month thing. So if she's not in payment status now, she will have to reapply, and she needs to do it 18 years in 1 month, and then they only count what her resources are in her income. And typically, a lot of times that's nothing. But while they're minor children, they take into consideration family income and family resources. And a lot of families have to have more income and resources to live than she can be eligible for SSI. So she would have to reapply to get the benefits started again. So Social Security doesn't really say they have a disability or they don't have a disability. I think a lot of people say, oh, they said I didn't have a disability, but how is that? I have a disability. What Social Security is looking at is this is what your disability is. Your doctor has given you that diagnosis, or your psychiatrist has given you that diagnosis. What they're looking at is, does your disability keep you from making substantial gainful activity? And so that's kind of where the burden of proof is that what is it about the individual that they're not going to be able to have a 40-hour work job making enough money to pay their bills? You know, whether it's, you know, they have, gait issues, or stamina issues, or they need verbal reminders to remain on task. Those are the things that kind of are useful to put in there. So we have some individuals that it's not very obvious. And the application is kind of detailed, and it's like it seems like they ask the same question over and over and over, but they have a remark section. And when you get to that remark section, that's where your ability to tell them as a parent, because you have been with them their entire lives. And these people up in Columbus are getting a snippet, and they're getting like reports. They're getting just the nut bolts. So if you have something that it's not very obvious that you want them to know, use that remark statement and say, this is what I know about my child. This is why he's not going to be able to go get a 40-hour job. The application process is, you know, it's that they contract with Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. So Social Security doesn't even do the determination, OD does. And it's, you know, in Columbus, they don't ever hardly meet the people. Now, what they could do is, if it's not clear that they could, that they meet the eligibility, they can have them go to a psychiatrist or psychologist and get a psych eval done, or go to a medical doctor if it's a medical issue and get them up. And if they do that, Social Security pays for that, and they use that in their determination. Now, you always have the right to appeal. So if somebody gets denied, we always recommend to appeal. And when you appeal, then that's your sign that says, hey, we need more evidence. And the evidence could be getting, you know, I say when you apply, when we do the VPAP, I want to turn in their IEPs, I want to turn in their ETRs, I want to turn in their medical doctor, their psychologist, their neurologist, speech therapy, occupational therapy, so that the person looking at it can say, oh, this person really does have lots of needs. Because I had somebody who called me one time and said, I didn't get approved, or my son didn't get approved. How did they do that? And I said, well, let me check into it. I got a release. I was able to talk to Social Security, and they said, we didn't get approved because we got no records. We sent a letter to the public school, and we sent a letter to the pediatrician. Nothing got returned. We got no information, so we can't determine. So it's the letter said it cannot be determined, but all she saw was they said no. And I said, well, let's get the IEPs and the all of the information and make sure they have it. So, and then, so I always say, send what you want them to have, because you never know what they're going to get. You know, school districts, I know, especially during the summer, if it goes in the summer, a lot of times there's not a lot of staff there. Sometimes there was like one of the buildings moved and they had everything in boxes, and the people are like, well, we can't find their records. I mean, now they should have everything, I think, on electronic, but back then it was all paper. So, so if you have the IEPs and the ETRs and the occupational therapy and the psych evals, send that in with your application. That way, you know they have it.
I have a lot of parents say they're going to wait for their young adult to be eligible before they get a job. I personally do not recommend that. They are looking at employability when they are 18. I think it can help your case. So if there's work programs, we have a boot camp that's offered with Greene County during the summer. Take advantage of all of those programs because what you're doing is you're collecting data. So I've seen some refusals and denials based on that there's not enough information for Social Security to determine if their disability is going to impact their work. So by all means, if there's job opportunities, take advantage of that, because that's going to help you in your supporting documentation. They have work experience and what modifications were needed while they were successful on the job. And that is great information to send in instead of saying they're going to get a job after they're eligible, because that employability might be the terminating factor for eligibility. So encourage your young adults to take advantage of all of those opportunities. It will only help them.
We have another question here about vehicle ownership. Is the vehicle ownership considered as an asset for SSI?
You can own one vehicle. You can own one house and you can own one vehicle. If you have two vehicles, then that is considered a resource, but you are allowed to own a home and a vehicle. You will report that on the application. They ask you, is the home you own, do you reside in, do you have any others, do you own a vehicle, that kind of thing. So yes, you can own one of each.
I have another one here. We have not applied for anything for my son. He'll be 18 in November. Should we wait until December or apply now?
Absolutely wait till December. If you apply now, they're going to tell you if he's not eligible. They're going to look at your income, your family income, and your resources. And if they don't, if they're over, they're going to say, oh, he's over income, and they're going to deny him. And then you're going to have to reapply in December anyway. So you might as well wait till December. So with SSI, when you do apply, even if it may take them months to make the determination, the month that you apply is the month that they will go back to. And then if you apply in December, they don't give you a payment for the first month that you've applied, but they will start it the next month. So say it takes till, March for them to approve, they will then give the back payment for March, April, and March, February, and January as back payment. So. The other thing I want to mention is about the reduced rate SSI. So with Social Security, when you apply, the first thing, a lot of times I'll say, well, how much does the individual pay toward their care now? Can they pay for rent? Well, most of our individuals have no income. So you have to say, no, they're not paying now because they don't have any income. So what that does is that puts them in the in-kind where they're getting subsidies from the parents in order to live. And that makes them get a lower SSI. So they don't have to keep a lower SSI for the rest of the time. I mean, they can say, hey, I'm now paying my fair share, or a lot of times when you add up the family bills, even the Social Security that they get would not even touch whatever, a fourth of the bills. I mean, I have no idea what anybody's rent and, utilities are and what have you, but if you have somebody who is, you can say that you're charging a flat fee for them to live in your home, and then show that to Social Security, and then they can look at it and say, okay, now we do know that the person's paying for their living expenses. If you do that, I mean, Social Security, SSI really is meant to help pay for their rent, their food, their clothing. So if you're saying that you're charging somebody $400 to live in their room and to share living spaces with the family, I would then take that $400 out of the account, put it into wherever the household account is to pay bills, because that's what that Social Security is really meant for. You really can't leave it in the bank and not do anything with it anyway, because you'll be over $2,000 and it'll be over income. But that money is meant to help pay for rent, electricity, all of the things that they need.
Does that even apply though, when you say in kind? I spoke to Judy Lamaje a long time ago about this. She said it's still a fair share. I don't do the rent and all that. I do the bare minimum for that reason, because we take care of our bills. But she said you can still have her purchase a TV, a chair. If you get a camper or something like that in there and doing that, but can you still do a monthly draw based upon your finance, your house payment, your cable TV, without specifying that
So
on the application?
yeah, you don't have to specify what all you're charging them for. The first thing that they will do is
Because then you become a landlord, I guess.
kind of, sort of. Now, a lot of people are saying, so do I have to report that I'm getting rent from my daughter? And it's like, well, Social Security is not going to turn you in. And I guess in the true sense, you probably are kind of a landlord, but I've never known anybody that's been in trouble for not reporting that as income.
Because truly, it's not income, it's going to pay for
Sure.
your living expenses that she is incurring too. So the flat fee to me is what, the first thing that they're gonna ask you is, if somebody else that wasn't related to you was gonna live in your house, how much would you charge them? And I actually went down to Social Security and said, the person was, she said she would charge anybody else $800 to live with her, but she's only charging her daughter $500. So Social Security says, oh, so you're giving her in-kind support because somebody else would pay more than what she's paying.
Sure.
So then she was like, I don't understand. She needs more money. She don't need less. But in Social Security's eyes, if you can get 800 and you're only charging her $500, you're basically giving her $300 to live in your home.
Gotcha.
And I wouldn't consider it renting because that's why they call it fair share. You're not entering a rental contract with her.
Right.
Whereas as Tammy said, if somebody was renting their room for $800, that is a rental agreement and you would actually have to report that as income on a rental. But if they're paying their fair share, then it's not technically rent. It's their expenses to stay in the home for electrics, just like if they were in a roommate with somebody else and they're paying their fair share of those expenses. And so
So I
that's
don't
why we
have-
don't.
So I wouldn't have to declare that then.
No.
You see what I'm saying? But be able to
Right.
still utilize it as.
And that's what it's for. It's for her to contribute to her daily living expenses. If somebody is renting to you, you're charging them a rent, but you're not collecting utilities and stuff necessarily on them. So that is income, but her contributing to her expenses that she's occurring while living in your home would not classify as a rental agreement or classify as income that you're receiving because you're using it to supply food, clothing, experiences and everything for her.
So is there some kind of formula for the fair share? Like what is there a maximum allowance for that? Like the example of the lady that would charge someone else 800 versus what she charges her. I don't know, is there a formula?
So the way that they come up with fair share is they say, okay, what is all of your expenses to the house?
Mhm.
And they do look at rent, utilities, water, trash, taxes, insurance, things that you're like not even thinking of. So they look at all that stuff and say, okay, so your bills for the month are $2,000. There's 4 people living in the home.
Okay.
Okay, so 4 divided into 2,000 is $500. So
Okay.
if she's able to pay $500, then she's paying her fair share. But if the bills are more than that, depending on, what their bills are, there could be, it could be $4,000 is the amount that is everybody's paying, and 4 would be 1,000. Well, SSI doesn't go up to 1,000.
Uh-huh.
So she would not be able to pay her fair share because she doesn't have $1,000 to pay. Now, if she were working and she had more income because she was working and had some SSI, she possibly could be paying her fair share. And like I said, then that's when whatever it is, the amount is, you're really supposed to have a paper trail of where that money is going.
So then how would I figure what her fair share would be?
I heard one time, and I don't think I heard it from Social Security, it was an 80%, 20%. 80% of what they receive should go towards living expenses and 20% can be recreational and savings. I don't think I heard that from Social Security, so I can't say that that is their formula. But we do know that if she gets $800 a month to spend all of that month on living expenses, it does not give her the opportunity to pursue interest, and it doesn't give her an opportunity to save, and she has a right to both. So that would be the determination that you would need to make what is appropriate for her to have to save and do recreational. Instead of the full 800, maybe you would take 600 or 650 because it's enough to go towards her living expenses, but at the same time allows her money for recreation as well as to save instead of throwing it all. But if she gets 800 and you charge her 200 for fair share, that's quite a bit of savings for recreational, and that's not really the purpose of it. So the majority of it should go towards living expenses, but by all means, some of it should be reserved for personal interest and other things.
So she's already getting it. She recently started getting Social Security and we haven't been in kind up till now. But I think we would like to go ahead and start requesting fair share from my daughter. So then she would probably get more money from Social Security. But like, if I say her fair share is $800, they're going to deny that, right?
Well, but she's only getting, what,
Right,
$640 or something like
something
that?
like that, yeah.
So she doesn't have $800 to pay.
Oh, so they wouldn't give more than 600.
So
I think what she's getting to is, and I went through this in the very beginning, that's why I did the benefit, because I don't want to mess with all the other stuff. But you would have to almost, I believe what you're asking is, you would have to go back and say she's now providing for shelter. She's now providing her own food. And that would give her more money to put toward that,
Right.
and then still working in kind also.
And so then that's why I'm wondering, like, what is the
And now
amount?
you're really keeping a paper trail.
Mhm.
Right,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Social Security is not going to tell you how much you need to charge. That is something that individually you're going to have to come up with
oh,
and keep records. They're never going to say this is the amount or this is a percentage. I know some people do 80-20. I cannot say if that's recommended by Social Security. It's just some people do that.
right.
Some people don't, but yeah, you would have to come up with that amount and be consistent. If it's the same amount every month, be consistent. Of course, with living expenses going up and she'll get a rate increase, and that amount can increase because expenses are going higher.
Mhm.
Now, with SSI, you have to keep track of that they're paying their expenses and everything, but when they switch over to their parents' SSD, then from what Social Security told me, you don't have to keep track anymore of what they're using it for. Is that, but for Medicaid, you have to make sure that they're in that right limit for Medicaid,
for the Medicaid, the $2,000 asset limit is still in place.
unless they're.
But for
unless they're
SSDI,
on
there
Medi-
is no asset. You can have $50,000 in the bank and still get your SSDI because
okay.
it's something that somebody has paid into that you're getting at, whereas SSI is general tax dollars. So as soon as they can move somebody off of general tax dollars onto the SSDI side, they want to do that because then that frees up the general tax dollars to get more people SSI. The SSDI has, you're right, they don't really, I mean, certainly they're hoping that somebody is going to, if somebody's misusing their money, that somebody's going to report that. But you're right, you don't have to do any reporting of income or where the money is going. And there's no asset limit. But for Medicaid, if they're not working and on Medicaid buy-in, it's the $2,000.
Unless they're on the waiver because of their other issues, and then it's
Well, the waiver, if they're needing Medicaid, it's still $2,000 assets
in order to stay on the waiver.
in order to stay on Medicaid.
But not the
Medicaid
wa-
wait,
but not the
bill
waiver,
concern.
without losing your
You're not
waiver.
going to
Yeah.
lose it. You're not going to lose it.
If they don't have Medicaid, if you let their bank account go over $2,000 and you know, if you do it once or twice, I think they're, I mean, Medicaid's not gonna kick you off for no harm, no foul. I mean, they understand. My county works really good with Jobs and Family Services. So if somebody is over assets, they pretty much say, spend it down, prove to us you spend it down, and then you'll be okay. SSI, on the other hand, is not gonna do that. They're gonna say, you're over assets, you're not due a check. But Medicaid knows that our individuals that have waiver, they need that waiver because of medical need, long-term care needs. So they're not going to just turn you off. But they will let you know, hey, you're over assets, you need to spend it down. And then when you spend it down, if you've been over, make sure you keep receipts of where the money went, because they want to make sure that you don't give it away, you don't hide it. You know, I had somebody say, I'm gonna give it all to my church. You're not allowed to do that. You have to pay for something that the individual needs. You know, get her new clothes, get her, and then show receipts. And then Social Security, I mean, Jobs and Family Services don't really care what it gets spent on. It just has to be spent on her. So she can't buy her sister a car.
But you can go on vacation.
She could go on vacation and keep receipts.
And keep in mind, if you're the parent and you're a payee, that can change for SSDI. But if you're not a parent and somebody has been appointed to be a rep payee, it is their role to keep track of all expenses because they have access to that account. So yes, you do have to keep track of the record, but a parent, it's going to be different. But if you have an agency, they're going to have to keep record because it's just part of what their policy is to make sure it's not misappropriated. If that makes sense.
We have a few more questions out here on virtual, and then so I can let them go. But it's one of the parents said, I just heard about a 5-year look back for an SSI applicant. What happens if we closed our daughter's savings account and don't have access to the statements when we go to apply for SSI? And then further down, they did say they closed her savings account and opened a checking account. So they still have a checking.
I don't think there's a 5-year look back on SSI. There is for Medicaid.
Medicaid does that.
But not SSI.
I've not, yeah, I personally haven't heard that they go back 5 years. I'm
No.
certain they could, but I haven't experienced them going back. Do they provide this parent a reason why they're going back and checking assets for 5 years?
She just heard about it. So I guess that she was concerned when she goes in. When she goes in to apply, she just said they don't have access to the savings account anymore if they need the statements when they go to apply for SSI. So I think she was just concerned when she goes in to apply.
When she goes in to apply, they want current information. So they want her current bank accounts that she has open in her name and the balances now. They're not interested in accounts that have been closed that are not active with no money. They just want a current balance. And so Medicaid can go back 5 years. Sometimes they do, but they have the opportunity to do that. But Social Security is just right now, what does her finances look like?
And then back to regarding the rent, someone asked, we were told by someone that we could not charge rent unless we had a rentable space in our home or an additional structure on our property. Can you provide any info about that, or have you heard about that?
So, I did have somebody who they were told that they had to have a separate entrance and exit than the rest of the family in order to do that. And then I inquired with Social Security and somebody at Social Security, and they said the rules do not say that it was basically the caseworker kind of putting in their own spin on it. So what I was told was that they do not have to have a separate entrance and exit. So to me, that would mean that they can live in the family home and use all of the same amenities and still be able to show that they're paying their fair share or their flat fee.
And that's why Social Security, when they talk to a family, they're going to ask about fair share. They really don't say, what is the rent? It's mostly fair share because you're not technically gaining income from the young adult. You're just asking them to contribute to the best of their ability to the family income or the family resources or bills.
We have some parents on here from other counties. To find someone for them to talk to, if they would reach out to you, or should they work, if they're getting, how can they find someone in their area like you guys to talk to, or can they talk to you to help, where they should go with all this or with the application with questions?
I field questions all the time, so I would be open to get other counties to call me. I probably wouldn't be able to do any like benefits analysis for them or anything like that, but I could, I am in a statewide benefits coordinators group. So if I had to, I could probably find out who in that county. There are lots of people, Ohio Legal Rights or Disability Rights Ohio, they do benefits analysis. So there are other agents, there's the Adams Board, I think they do. There's some other agencies that do benefits analysis and will help with some of these questions. So, and I can put it out there and say, hey, I got somebody in, this county. Is there anybody that can tell me, who they can get a hold of? And I can probably find somebody for them.
And
I think, go ahead.
If they are receiving county board services, an SSA is also a great resource to contact. And if they don't know, they can find somebody who is aware of helping with that application. So you have a couple options of who to reach out to.
And I think in Warren County, someone asked about Warren County, and I believe it's still Latasha Olinger. Is that correct?
It still is Latasha Olemer. Yes.
Okay. There was a question, and Terry, you may need to jump on because I'm not sure if I'm going to read this right of your question. But this is when we were talking about rent, I believe is when she made the comment. But she said they'll ask you if you have a loan agreement and can you put any leftover money after monthly expenses into the stable account? And I don't know if Terry, you want to elaborate on that if you're still on.
So when we applied for SSI and we got our medical qualification and I had the phone call with the person, they asked me if I had a loan agreement with my son, not a rental agreement. And that was different than a rental agreement. So that's what my person asked me. So
Yeah, I've never heard of anybody asking about a loan agreement. I'm not sure. And I'm not sure what the stable account has to do with it. I'm not sure why they were
doesn't.
asking.
The stable account doesn't. I just had another question and I put them all together. So if you get your $941 and you take out your expenses for the month and you have leftover money in that account, payee account, can you transfer that money to the stable account so it keeps your amount in your payee account less than $2,000 and then that money doesn't count against you?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's what it's
Thank you.
for.
Mhm, yes.
And Terry, I think I saw where you were still asking about the waiver Medicaid and the SSI Medicaid. Did you get your question answered on that?
So I guess my question was, we currently have a waiver Medicaid. We're in the process of trying to get SSI. And do you recommend switching from the waiver to the SSI Medicaid? I know they're supposedly the same, but is there any benefit from one to the other? Or
So
is
yeah, let me expand on that. So Jobs and Family Services, what they have to do is, there's pots of money that gets used for all of the different types of Medicaid. There are over probably 100 types of Medicaid. I mean, it's astounding. So when somebody is getting Medicaid, they have to qualify the person on the lowest level or the entry level. So in the state of Ohio, if you get SSI, you get Medicaid. So they wouldn't have to be on waiver Medicaid anymore. They would still get SSI Medicaid. It's still full Medicaid. So it will pay for waiver. You know, then they look at MAGI Medicaid, which is modified adjusted gross income, and that's for people who are low income. A lot of those people don't have to have disabilities to get Medicaid. It is basically low income, low resources, and they do look at household income. So if they're on, that's where they go by tax returns. So if you're claiming your children on your tax return, they may look at that and say, okay, you know, they then count your income and your resources. So they may not qualify for that. Then they go to the next level, which is DAC Medicaid, which is disabled adult child. If somebody was getting SSI and now they're taking a parent's SSDI and it's over the income limit for SSI, they still get Medicaid, because why would I take my dad's, why would I take $100 more in SSDI and it's going to kick me out of Medicaid? So they allow them to stay on the Medicaid. So basically, if he gets SSI, they will go on SSI Medicaid. I don't think there's a choice, because the federal government and the state government wants to know how many people are on SSI are getting Medicaid, how many people on DAC are getting Medicaid, because they want to know where the pots of money are going. So they do have to qualify them in the lowest or the most entry level and then go up. Waiver Medicaid is kind of like the last way to get Medicaid, because you have too much income, but you have the long-term care needs.
So pretty much, if you just have SSI and no waiver, you are eligible for Medicaid because of your eligibility for SSI. But once you're on a waiver, that criteria changes. You're eligible for Medicaid because you are enrolled, excuse me, on a waiver. And so that's why you have Medicaid. You're on a Medicaid waiver and you need to have a Medicaid plan that sustains those services and supports that you're using through the Medicaid waiver. So your eligibility for Medicaid changes because you now are eligible based on your eligibility for a Medicaid waiver. Now, there's different programs that are offered through Medicaid that you can see if it suits well with the individual's medical needs, but it does need to be, it needs to correspond with the waiver because some of them are not compatible. So you can look at different plans and options on the Medicaid waiver. It has to be compatible with the waiver so you can continue waiver services.
I think I got all the questions that were out here. If I missed anybody's question virtually, feel free to raise your hand or ask. But I think I got everybody's questions that are in the chat box.
And is it okay if I stop sharing now?
Yeah, you can stop sharing. I think everybody got the phone numbers and everything for that. Yeah. So real quick, I wanted to just mention, I mean, you guys can keep asking questions, but just before everybody got off virtually, just wanted to mention next week on Tuesday night, because we mentioned tonight special needs trust. There's a little bit of mention about stable account special needs trust. Tuesday night, we have a special needs trust. It'll be virtual, it'll be on Zoom, but we have Laura Drake and she'll be talking about special needs trusts on Tuesday night. So I wanted to be sure that everybody's aware of that too. If you need the information, let me know. Also, those in the room or those virtually, if you need a CEU, you can email me if you didn't respond to any of the questions, but just let me know so I can get you that CEU if you want one.
And Patty, could
Yes.
you put on the chat box how to access the live binder so they can hear the recording if they need to, please?
Yeah, so we have, and I'll have Michelle throw it up there because I know she has some of the links ready to go. So we have a couple things. You can go, it'll take me a day or two to do it, but I'll get the recordings onto a YouTube. We have a SALT YouTube. And so the videos are on there. We have a Buzzsprout, which is a podcast, so you can listen to it without a video. And then we have those two options. We'll have the presentations out on the SALT Google Drive, and then we'll also move information into our SALT Live binder. We have a tab for just the current presentation, so you have to go to the tab. I think it's like the third tab in or something, but it's just like a binder. It's just tabbed with different topics, and we have one with this year's current presentations in it. So you'll have, that option too. If you have trouble with any of these links or can't navigate, just let me know and we'll get that for you.
I see you have a question that's asking if somebody can have a direct deposit of their work income to go straight into the stable account. Yes, you can do that, but you still have to report the income to Social Security. That does not negate the responsibility of reporting the income, but yes, you can, if you choose, have that go directly into a stable account, but you have to report it.
One thing that I stumble on is a stumbling block for me, and I just want to throw it out there because I know it's something that we'll come across. With SSDI, you have SGA. You have your limits, your income limits. About twice a year, you get 3 pays in a month, especially if you're beyond that trial period and everything. If you go over SGA, even for that month, does that mean you fall out of eligibility and would have to requalify?
No.
No.
No,
Okay.
So for SSDI, what they do is they look at when you earn it, not when you receive it. So SSI, if you get that third check, it does count for SSI because you have that money available in the month. The SSDI, they're looking at how much did you earn in the month. So months go, or checks go between 2 months. So basically the way that I tell people is that you would go your rate of income or your rate of pay. So if you're getting $12 an hour and you're working 20 hours a week, then you multiply it by 4.33 because there's a third of a week more per month than 4 weeks. And that's what Social Security kind of uses if they can't really determine when you earned it, they will use that kind of as, so it's not that you get 3 paychecks and you could be over SGA. It's really how much did you work each month, or each week, times the rate of pay, and then times it by 4.33.
Okay. I know that's a question that comes up so often, and is a concern when we get to that point.
Yep. That's why also reporting the paychecks to Social Security, especially for SSDI. Now, sometimes I'll tell you, we don't do them on a regular basis, so don't turn them in every month. Well, you still need to turn them in every month because they need to know where you are in the trial work period, the EPE, and they need to be letting you know. And if you go to the point where you're over and you've been reporting and they say, oh, it's our fault, we should have done it, but we didn't. That's your proof of saying, okay, so Security, it was your fault, you didn't do it. We don't have to pay back. So it would be easier to win an overpayment if you can show somebody faithfully reported to Social Security and Social Security didn't do what they were supposed to do, and now you have to pay back, $3,000. You can say, no, Social Security, if you would have done it on a regular basis and let us know, then we would not have had this overpayment. So reporting every month is key, even for SSDI. And that's also with the paycheck stubs. So if it's vacation, that's not earned. You're not working. If you got sick leave, that's not earned. So if you don't report and they use an average of what IRS gives them, they're going to add all that sick leave and vacation time to your income, and it could push you over when really you didn't. We have some places that like cash you out your vacation at the end of the year. And so they give you your pay, what you earn, and they give you a week vacation because you didn't use it for the year. Guess what? You're over SGA. But if you can show that paycheck stub that says I got a week's vacation, I didn't earn it, then they can look at it and say, okay, even though your income was over SGA, not really, because it's not all earned. But if
So that would be along the lines also like a Christmas bonus check or something like that.
Absolutely. So bonuses, if they are production related, they count. So if they're like profit sharing, they count. But if they give you an attendance bonus, just because everybody's got good attendance, that's not production related. If they just give you, $50 because they just want to, but they're not saying that it's related to anything you've done, then it's not a production. But if they say, we did so well this month because everybody worked so hard, we're going to give everybody a production related bonus. And that counts as toward the SGA. So that, and we do have some people that we have to tell them on those months that you're going to get those production bonuses, you need to tell them I have to take, right now I have somebody who's taking 3 days off this month because they're getting production bonus.
Can you read Patty's email to me? I can't see it far.
Yeah, my email.
Where it says for CEU requests, please email.
Oh, yeah, it's PRTPATTIS@gmail.com.
Thank you.
And I'm going to close the recording for right now. And then, we can, because we're getting close to 8 o'clock. So 1 second, but I do want to thank everybody that's on virtually for coming, and everybody that's in the room there. Thank you all for coming. This was our first hybrid, and that was a great, I think it was, I know you guys had storms, so I'm so thankful we didn't lose internet or something. But 1 second while I close out, and thank you all again for coming.